Is Belarus massing troops on the Ukrainian border in preparation for an attack? And has Russia launched a massive drone wave across Ukraine? I'm Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran. Let's talk about this potentially serious story. Okay, so this is actually Ukraine who outed Belarus and the Belarusian military as massing near Ukraine's border, what Ukraine calls, quote, under the guise of exercises. And you might recall that in 2020, Putin also massed his army on the border with Ukraine, also claiming to be exercises. Obviously, that was a prelude to an invasion. But the question is this act by Belarus also an invasion? Well, Ukraine is saying that a significant number of personnel being concentrated along the northern Ukrainian border with Belarus, what they call under the guise of exercises. Minsk says they're concentrating their special operations forces, as well as tanks, artillery, MLRS, air defense systems, and engineering equipment near the Belarusian city of Gomel. And this is about 30 kilometers from the Russia-Ukraine border. But what's also troubling is that Wagner PMC troops were also present in the area, right? Now, Lukashenko explicitly said this summer he sent about a third of his nation's army to the border. And Lukashenko did not deny that a buildup was happening, but said it was a result of misunderstanding between Belarus and Ukraine. But it's not clear what that misunderstanding could be that would warrant this. Of course, the Belarusians say this is purely defensive. These air defenses are simply to shore up their border with Ukraine. Now, what is actually happening here? Well, we know that Belarus is effectively a Russian proxy state. They host Russian troops and missiles and aircraft. But Lukashenko has actually been very prominent and very public with the fact that he doesn't want his troops involved in this. He has said repeatedly, Putin has tried to persuade Lukashenko to involve Belarus directly in ground combat in Ukraine, but Lukashenko has continually sort of curved him. And the reason is pretty clear. The Belarusians, unlike the Russians, they know that they have no dog in this fight, right? Putin's whole Ruski Mir nonsense and greater Russia, well, there is no greater Belarusia. So for Lukashenko and more importantly, his generals, they've said, listen, we're not doing this. We've seen the casualties that Russian armed forces take, and we're not going to subject the Belarusian military to that same rate of casualties. But it's possible that those generals have finally lost out and that Putin has made them an offer they literally can't refuse. Certainly, this is the time when I think Putin would put the squeeze the hardest on Belarus, given the fact that Putin really wants to be able to do two sort of differing things. He wants to get the Ukrainians out of Kursk, and he wants to continue his Donetsk offensive. The only way to do that, of course, is to spread the Ukrainian forces even thinner, and that would involve bringing Belarus into the fight. But we're going to talk about if that's the only strategy that works. But first, of course, if you feel like you're spread a little thin, take it on too much at once, you don't have to enlist your shady autocratic neighbor. Instead, you can just bump up your caffeine intake. That's why I want you to check out Strike Gum. If you're somebody who drinks energy drinks like Red Bull or Amp Energy or any of those other energy drinks that you get at the gas station, they're like $5 a can. I made Strike Gum for you. This has all the caffeine of an energy drink plus 100 milligrams alpha GPC in each individual piece, right? But it's got zero sugar, so there's no sugar crash. So you just pop it in, chew it, you get the same rush of energy of an energy drink. Better, in fact, because we use ingredients like natural caffeine that's derived from green coffee beans, none of the weird lab-made encapsulated stuff that they put in energy drinks, right? Plus, it's a refreshing mint flavor. You're not going to smell like cough medicine. And if you're somebody that works with your hands, right, you can't carry around an energy drink while you're working on a job site, right? While you're treating patients as a nurse or going to a call as a cop, right? So if you want that better energy drink alternative, Strike Gum's what you want. You can go to strikegum.com. That's where you're going to get your new user discounts, your veteran and first responder discounts. I would urge you to buy the 5-pack. I think that's your best deal if you want to check it out. You're going to have, a pack for your car, a pack for your office, pack for your gym bag, and a pack to give to somebody else to spread the word. We're made in the USA, and obviously, we're veteran owned. It's my company. So if you want to support a true American brand, go to strikegum.com. The link is in the description. Okay, let's talk a little bit first about the Armed Forces of Belarus. Armed Forces of Belarus here are not that big, actually. They only have about 63,000 active personnel. That's a lot. That's still a lot, because remember, we're only looking, the entire Kursk incursion is only, I think, 10 to 15,000 reportedly. They're a very small military and take up only just 1% of the Belarusian GDP. For context, the American military spends about 3% of its GDP on military affairs, and the NATO standard is about 2%. And they have less than $1 billion of military expenditure. So they would not be able to, for example, drive all of this, drive a ton of territory, right? Seize a ton of territory. But what they would force Ukraine to do, in all likelihood, you could see here that when you look at the map, you could see that Belarus owns the majority, in fact, of this Ukrainian northeastern border. And what I think their goal is to create a situation where either they literally just, even if they don't want to take territory, they force the Ukrainians to deploy a large number of brigades to sort of stop these troops here. But it's also possible that this is just a show. Now, and I point this out because let's say Belarus threateningly moves their army to the border. And Ukraine, what are they going to do? They're going to have to respond. So they're going to move, let's say they move their own brigade to the border, right? So again, that would be still a pretty bad outnumbering, right? You'd be, a brigade would be about 3,000 Ukrainian troops standing off against about, 20,000 Belarusian troops. So you've got this sort of trade-off. And then what does that mean? That means that a whole Ukrainian brigade is out of the fight. And I point this out because without firing a shot, Belarus will have taken a Ukrainian brigade or brigade plus out of the fight entirely. This is a classic example of sort of the power of kind of deterrence and the ability to sort of drain an opponent without necessarily firing a shot. This is also an illustration of why it's so important to do intelligence work. Because let's say the CIA knocked on Zelensky's door and said, hey, listen, we can't tell you why, but we have very high confidence that Lukashenko not going to invade. In that case, Ukraine may just resort to firm words to say, don't think about invading, and that's it. But let's say the CIA knocks on the door and says, listen, we have no idea what he's going to do. Well, then you say, shoot, I can either pull a brigade off of these efforts or I can risk losing all of Chernihiv Oblast, right? So for Zelensky, you see the value of these intelligence officials and their ability to efficiently allocate their resources. One other thing I want to point out that's troubling, you notice Ukraine here. We're looking at hundreds of drone strikes being launched across the entirety of Ukraine. You could see in Kiev, air defense is being activated across the area. Lots and lots of drones being taken out. Lots and lots of drones hitting. Purportedly, this was around 200 drones and missiles being fired by the Russian military at targets, again, potentially deep in Ukraine. You could see them being fired near a variety of towns, particularly in the east and, of course, in the central area of the country near Kiev. This is it's hard to say what exactly this is about. This may be seen as punishment. I think this is likely a counteraction to Ukraine launching its drone jet. Russia just wants to send a reminder to Ukraine that says, yeah, you can have better drones, but we still have these cruise missiles, and quantity has a quality all its own. One other story that I thought was really interesting. We talked earlier about Zelensky's meeting with Modi, the Prime Minister of India. And we talked about the fact that Ukraine's economy just doesn't have a lot of economic credit to offer to India to say, listen, you don't have to partner with Russia. I know they're making you a lot of money, but you should instead have your loyalty to Ukraine, and you should abandon buying cheap Russian oil and selling them goods and buying from their military manufacturing. Well, Zelensky wasn't able to offer him money, but he was able to offer him something almost as good when you are an emerging power like India, and that is prestige. He, in fact, came out and said, I would support India hosting the next peace summit. So hosting a major international, a global peace summit would be a massive boon to India, right? This is, again, a country that, like China, aspires to rise to be a global superpower. And they have all the parts, right? They have a large population. They have a really robust technical and education sector, right? India has a space program. Okay, they're only one of a handful of countries on planet Earth with a space with an independent space program, right? Again, that's something that most European countries don't have. So I say this because it would be prestigious to broker an actual peace deal. And Kiev is hoping to bring in countries from the global south into kind of Kiev's fold, so to speak. The reason is, of course, that when you have Russia has really expanded its efforts to kind of pull in the global south, right? Russia spins this narrative that says, oh, even though we're in Europe and we're an industrial country and we aren't the West. We're not the big, mean colonial West. We prefer to dominate even though they're literally engaging in a colonial war, trying to annex an independent people, fold them into this Russian sphere of influence. Despite them literally actively doing that, they're still knocking on the doors of African countries, particularly dictatorships, and saying, listen, don't go with those colonial Westerners with their constant hand-wringing about human rights and trying to grow your economy. Come into the Russian fold. We're going to be a better, more honest partner. And for Zelensky and Kiev, they say, listen, we can't lose the global south, right? They're still collectively a very powerful bloc. So having a country that's considered the global south, again, they're a BRICS country, but to have them host the second peace summit would be a very appealing offer and something that doesn't physically cost Ukraine anything other than just trading off prestige. But again, is Zelensky in danger of losing the support of Western Europe? No. Are they in danger of losing the support of the United States? Also no. So you might as well use this this tool, this peace summit, to try to get what you want, to try to get India to come over, right? Of course, it's a long way away. And it's still, again, money talks in this world. Prestige is good, but money's better, especially for a country like India, who's really needs to make sure it's continually lifting its nearly 1 billion people out of poverty. Anyway, guys, that's all I had. Be sure to subscribe to the channel. That makes a huge difference for me. It tells the YouTube algorithm that I make quality content. And of course, thanks to our Colonel tier members like James Sterling, Steve Moran, Doug Beck, Alan Knutson, Bastian Himmerling, Yanko Georgiev, Dale McCombs, and more. Thank you guys to our Lieutenant tier members. I could not do this without you guys. I appreciate you so much, and I will see you all in the next one. Cheers.